Hi, I'm Hal Roberts. This is Bridge City News. Here's some of the top stories we've been following.
The Lethbridge District Exhibition will be looking for a new CEO as the organization and Mike Workington have gone their separate ways. The Alberta NDP is hosting more town halls to hear if Albertans want the province to pull out of the Canada Pension Plan in favor of an Alberta-made version. And Israel has confirmed that 3 Israeli hostages were mistakenly killed by the Israeli Defense Forces.
Your nation, your province, your southern Alberta. From the heart of Lethbridge, it's Bridge City News with Hal Roberts.
Thanks so much for joining us. Lethbridge and District Exhibition and CEO Mike Workington have parted ways. The LDE now begins its restructuring. Workington joined the group in 2018 and was named CEO back in May of 2021. During his time as head of the exhibition, funding was secured to build the $77 million Agri-Food Hub and Trade Centre, which was about $10 million over budget. The LDE said Workington was also able to implement different events and initiatives, including the Lethbridge and District Pro Rodeo last year and free admission to Whoop Up Days this year. Officials at the LDE Board of Directors will examine the leadership structure needed for future operations of the organization. Lethbridge Police wrapped up their 3rd week of their annual Christmas Check Stop campaign with 4 impaired drivers being removed from the roads. Police say they checked 250 vehicles and issued 4 immediate roadside sanction fails. Police also issued 2 cautions, a 24-hour suspension, and 19 violation tickets. The Christmas Check Stop campaign will continue until the end of the year. Police are asking locals not to share on social media where the check stops are set up. They say doing so assists impaired drivers avoid getting caught and puts all road users at risk. Lethbridge Police, along with city officials, want to hear from you regarding your perceptions of safety here in our community. The Building Safer Communities Fund, secured in July of this year, supports municipalities combating both gun crime and gangs, especially among young adults. The online community safety survey is on now until January 19th, where you can offer your input. Officials say results from the survey will build upon existing strategies to strengthen the city's understanding and community needs and trends. The survey can be found at getinvolvedlethbridge.ca. Lethbridge College is receiving a $360,000 grant over the next few years toward a new research project. Officials say the funding will be used to support marginalized populations as they reintegrate into the community through the use of art and Blackfoot worldviews. It is the first time the college has been a recipient of this federal funding. The program will host meetings of social recreational support that will include creating art, sharing food, learning about health in an environment guided by Blackfoot knowledge. It'll be open to anyone of any race or ethnic background who can benefit from the support and resources as they reintegrate into the Lethbridge community. The Alberta government announced that the Calgary Ring Road is now ready to be open to the public months ahead of schedule. The decades in making the 101-kilometer project includes 197 new bridges and 48 interchanges. Officials say the Ring Road means new travel options for Calgarians. It'll draw traffic away from Deerfoot Trail, 16th Avenue, Glenmore, and Sarcee trails. It'll also save time and money for commercial carriers.
We have finally accomplished what has been a very ambitious project and one so critical to Calgarians and residents of the Metro region now and for generations to come. Calgary's population has grown significantly since those early planning stages, and so has the number of commuters who will finally enjoy the full benefits of this complete, free-flowing ring road. For Calgarians and metro area residents who've been putting up with the headaches of one-lane traffic on this part of the roadway twice a day, every day, you can finally rest easier because your drive is going to get a whole lot easier. In fact, driving around Calgary will be easier and safer for everyone. Today's opening of the Ring Road marks the completion of the entire project, creating 101 kilometers of free-flowing traffic.
The Alberta NDP say they'll be doing more in-person town halls across the province to hear from Albertans who are concerned that the province may opt out of the Canada Pension Plan. Deputy Leader of the Official Opposition, Sarah Hoffman, says they'll continue to ensure the people of Alberta have a real opportunity to have their voices heard.
The Alberta NDP has been consulting with Albertans across the province throughout our online survey, as well as in-person town halls. And the message is being clear. Albertans want the UCP to keep their hands off their CPP. The finance minister and their panel chair recently announced that they are going to pause their consultation because they're waiting for concrete numbers from the chief actuary. This is a clear admission that the UCP plan isn't viable and that it's being built on imaginary math. This comes after the UCP has already spent $7.5 million of our public dollars trying to convince each other that their pension scheme is the right way to move forward.
Alberta Premier Daniel Smith says more studying needs to be done in order to consider moving forward with an Alberta-made pension plan. She also says a province-wide referendum would be held to see if Albertans in fact want to leave the CPP. Cross-country skiing is a favorite pastime for many Canadians, including us here in Alberta. It's really a fun way of getting out and enjoying all the nature has to offer during the snowy winter months. Greg Campbell is with the Cypress Nordic Ski Club here in Alberta. He explains how he first fell in love with cross-country skiing.
I just loved it so much, and I think I was really looking for something that got me a little bit maybe closer to nature. The exhilaration of training and working hard, probably the long distance aspect to it, to just let your troubles fade away, or it'd be kind of like a runner's high.
Make sure you catch the full interview with Greg Campbell from the Cypress Nordic Ski Club and BCN's Jeanette Rocher coming up later in our newscast. The head of the CIA has met with Israel's Mossad intelligence agency and the Prime Minister of Qatar in Poland since the end of a week-long ceasefire between Israel and Hamas. U.S. officials say the three discussed how to broker freedom for more hostages taken from Israel by Hamas on October the 7th. Israeli protesters have demanded the government relaunch talks with the terrorist group to release more hostages after three were mistakenly killed by Israeli troops.
במהלך הקרבות בסג'אעיה, כוח צה"ל זיהה בשוגג 3 ישראלים חטופים כאיום. כתוצאה מכך, הכוח ירה לעברם והם נהרגו. לאחר הירי, במהלך סריקה ובדיקה, עלה חשד מיידי לגבי זהות ההרוגים, וגופותיהם הועברו במהירות לבדיקה בארץ, ושם זוהו החטופים.
The work on the potential release of more hostages comes as American and Israeli defense ministers met at Tel Aviv to discuss Israel's goals of the war, along with concerns over the number of civilian deaths which have taken place in Gaza. Some trucks bringing humanitarian aid through the Rafah crossing into the Gaza Strip were emptied within minutes. This has been highlighting the desperation of people under a communications blackout for a 5th straight day. Food, water, and medical supplies have been desperately needed in the region. Officials say close to 2 million Palestinians, around 85% of the population in Gaza, have fled their homes due to the war between Israel and Hamas. A number of people have been living in crowded shelters and tent camps. Samaritan's Purse has been working with other humanitarian groups to help provide food for so many Israeli families who've been displaced due to the ongoing war between Israel and Hamas.
During this war, there's been rockets shot all up the coast. There's sirens going off every day, every few days here. They're having to run into their bomb shelters. When you're in a time of crisis, the last thing you want to think is about where your next meal's going to come from. And it's scary to go out when you don't know if it's safe. There's so much unknown. The heart behind offering grocery boxes is just to take off that pressure of needing to figure out where the next meal's going to come from. Today we're in Bat Yam at one of our distribution hubs, so grocery boxes funded by Samaritan's Purse. In the boxes we were handing out today, there's rice and beans, pasta, tea, coffee. And we, as believers, want to be among the first to respond, to follow in the footsteps of Jesus. Even in the midst of such darkness, believers are being the light. And while they feel like the world is turning against Israel, we're able to lean in and say that you're not alone.
Thanks American people because they think about Israeli people.
You know, there are reports surfacing which say the Biden administration has given $34 million in confidential aid to various groups in Gaza. Our foreign affairs expert Lisa Daftari says that's a slap in the face to Israel.
When you see the Biden administration and President Biden himself standing at the podium and offering some sort of support for Israel and its right to defend itself, but then giving money to those who are the enemies of Israel and do not want to see Israel's existence any longer. It's kind of a very different picture than the one that the Biden administration is hoping to paint. So a lot of flip-flopping here, a lot of different things, but thank God for these investigative reports that bring out a lot of these realities, and hopefully that the Biden administration will be pushed to answer some of these questions.
Lisa Daftari will also have details on why a U.S. nuclear-powered sub has arrived in South Korea. She'll have those details coming up in the second half of our program. British media report police have questioned comedian Russell Brand for a second time in the investigation into sexual offense claims against him. The Press Association news agency says the 48-year-old was interviewed under caution last week over 6 allegations. In September, British media outlets published claims by 4 women of being sexually assaulted or raped by Brand between the years 2006 and 2013. Brand has denied the allegations, calling them a smear campaign. A church in the Los Angeles area was destroyed by a massive fire just hours before a Christmas play and a toy giveaway. Fortunately, there were no injuries at the Victory Outreach Church located in Pomona, California.
So we're just, grateful that no one got hurt. That's the hard thing, is that, because we know that the church building could be rebuilt, but, we're here for people.
It's never convenient, but at this time of year, I think it's even more, hard to see because, everybody's here trying to do what they can do to make the community a better place. But, with that Christmas spirit, I have no doubt this community will come together and help celebrate in their own way.
Donald Trump is pushing his supporters to deliver a blowout win in the Iowa caucuses just over a month away. His campaign is hoping for a decisive win in January, which will cement his status as the presumptive nominee for the Republicans. We have more now in this report.
Thank you. You want a sticker? Did you sign up to caucus?
A month out from the Iowa caucuses, Donald Trump is pushing his supporters to deliver a blowout win.
We have fun at these things, right?
Recent polls show the former president holding a commanding lead over his closest rivals, Florida Governor Ron DeSantis and former UN Ambassador Nikki Haley.
It has to be Trump. That's all there is to it. Nobody else, even the other candidates, they're not going to be able to take what the Democrats are going to dish out. And the only one that can do that is Trump, because he's been there, done that. So I don't think that he's going to play nice this time.
Despite Trump's strong poll numbers, organizers are stressing the need for supporters to get out and vote.
The record in Iowa is 12 points, approximately, a margin of victory. We need to beat that. We need Donald Trump to set the record for the biggest win in Iowa history.
How simple is it to caucus? As simple as this.
The campaign is hosting a series of Commit to Caucus events designed to ensure that supporters turn out across the state.
And that's the first step to making President Trump our next president and making America great again.
Trump still faces opposition in Iowa. Governor DeSantis has visited each of the state's 99 counties and earned the governor's endorsement. Haley recently won the support of a well-funded PAC backed by the conservative Koch brothers network and has also stepped up her ground game. Trump narrowly lost Iowa in the 2016 caucuses, and with the GOP nomination officially an open race, the campaign hopes a decisive win in January will cement his status as the presumptive nominee.
It's time for the Republican Party to unite, to come together and focus our energy and resources on beating crooked Joe Biden and taking back our country. Very simple.
Reporting from Coralville, Iowa, Mark Van Cleve, Associated Press.
Well, it was on this day that the U.S. Supreme Court upheld the relocation and detention of Japanese Americans during the Second World War. Veteran Hollywood director and producer Steven Spielberg was born, and Tchaikovsky's The Nutcracker premieres. This is Today in History for December the 18th.
December 18th, 1944. The U.S. Supreme Court rules on the forced relocation and detention of Japanese Americans during World War II. While the High Court upholds the relocation, It adds Americans of Japanese ancestry who are undeniably loyal can no longer be detained. More than 4 decades later, the U.S. government apologizes for its policy and pays money to surviving Japanese Americans. 1972, during the Vietnam War, the United States begins 12 days of heavy bombing of North Vietnamese targets. A ceasefire agreement ending America's military role in its longest war is reached the following month. 1946. Movie director and producer Steven Spielberg is born in Cincinnati. Just a few of his many popular films: Jaws, E.T., Raiders of the Lost Ark, Jurassic Park, Schindler's List, and Saving Private Ryan. And 1892. The Nutcracker, the ballet by Peter Ilyich Tchaikovsky, publicly premieres in St. Petersburg, Russia. Today in history, December 18th. Ross Simpson, The Associated Press.
Well, we had lots of clouds, but fairly mild today, and the warmer temperatures should be sticking around for much of southwestern Alberta. Full weather details are on deck. We had a mainly cloudy day today in Lethbridge, but fairly mild for this time of year, and no snow. Tonight, it'll be partly cloudy with a low near -3. Tuesday, expect sunshine mixed with clouds and a high expected near 3 degrees. Warming up nicely under a sunny sky on Wednesday with a high near 7. Even warmer on Thursday with a high expected near 8 degrees. We'll take it for this time of year. Pretty much the same picture on Friday. Sunshine with a high of 8 on tap. Cooling off slightly on Saturday to 4 degrees and all the way down to -1 for Christmas Eve day. Now the average high for this time of year is right at the freezing mark at 0, and the average low is -12. The record high was a balmy 14 degrees set way back in 1954, and the record low was a very chilly -34 set back in 1955. The sun rose at 8:24 and set at 4:32. Let's see how Tuesday is shaping up across our home and native land now. Expect showers and 10 degrees in both Vancouver and Victoria, mainly cloudy, -3 degrees for Edmonton, and just 1 degree warmer with a high of -2 for Calgary. Expect an overcast day and -2 for a high in Saskatoon. Just a few clouds of -2 degrees as well for Regina. In Winnipeg, it should be mainly sunny and a high of -4. Now, in the central part of the country, expect rain mixed with snow and a high of only -4 in Ottawa, flurries at -1 in Toronto. Snow mixed with rain and a high of +1 in Montreal. In Atlantic Canada, expect rain and 8 degrees in Fredericton, showers and 10 degrees in Halifax, rain and 10 as well in Charlottetown, and in St. John's, expect lots of rain and a high near 11 degrees on Tuesday. Tesla's most recent recall will affect around 193,000 vehicles in Canada. Transport Canada says the company will provide an over-the-air software update to fix the advanced driver assistance features. The agency says the recall will be added to its database of vehicles with safety recalls. Tesla recalled more than 2 million cars across its model lineup, which were produced between October 5th of 2012 and December 7th of this year, following an investigation by the U.S. National Highway Safety Administration. U.S. safety regulators investigated a number of crashes which involved the company's autopilot feature, some of which were fatal. BP has stopped its shipments through the Red Sea. The London-based oil and gas giant joins a growing list of companies pausing shipments in the region because of the risk of a Houthi terrorist group attack in Yemen. Now, oil prices rose Monday partly over market nerves about attacks by the Iranian-backed Houthis. They have targeted container ships and oil tankers passing through a narrow waterway that connects to the Red Sea and Suez Canal, where an estimated 10% of the world's trade passes through. Good news for renters. A new report says the annual rent increases are slowing down. The average asking price for a rental unit in Canada was $2,174. The information from rentals.ca and Urban Nation show that was flat from the previous month, but still an increase of 8.4% compared with last year. The report shows the annual rate of rent growth in Canada continues to slow after climbing to around 10% in October and just over 11% in September. Vancouver saw rents rise 0.7% to $3,171, while average rents in Toronto dropped 2.4% to $2,913. Now, here's a look at today's markets.
The TSX was up 93 points on the day to finish at 20,622. The Dow was up just under a point to 37,306. The S&P 500 was up 21 on the day to 4740, and the Nasdaq was up 90 points to 14,904. West Texas Intermediate Oil was up $1.12 to $72.55 US per barrel. Natural gas was up 2 cents to $2.51 US. Gold was up $7.57 on the day to $2,027.19 US an ounce, and silver was down 5 cents to $23.80 US an ounce. Feed wheat is at $9.30 per bushel, barley's at $6.85, canola's at $14.51, and corn is at $8.02 per bushel. Live cattle were up 60 cents to $168.83. Feeder cattle January contract was up $2.28 to $223.18, and lean hogs February contract was down 33 cents to $71.58. The Canadian dollar was up slightly over the past 24 hours to 74.64 US.
Recapping one of our top stories, Lethbridge and District Exhibition and CEO Mike Workington have parted ways. The LDE now begins its restructuring. Workington joined the group in 2018 and was named CEO in May of 2021. The LDE said Workington has also been able to implement different events and initiatives, including the Lethbridge and District Pro Rodeo last year and free admission to Whoop Up Days this year. Officials say the LDE Board of Directors will examine the leadership structure needed for future operations of the organization. The U.S. Navy is beefing up its presence off the coast of Yemen as attacks by Houthi terrorists continue. Our foreign affairs expert Lisa Daftari will have details for us momentarily. When you see news happening in your community, be sure to drop us an email at info@bridgecitynews.ca. And if you missed any of our local stories, visit our website, bridgecitynews.ca.
Here's today's Bridge City News Community Calendar. Henderson Lake Park Run invites all to throw on a pair of runners and participate in a free weekly computer-timed and recorded 5-kilometer walk, jog, or run. The park run is one of 2,100 park runs held around the world. Dogs on leashes and kids in strollers are welcome too. The park run begins at the Kinsman Picnic Shelter at 9 a.m. every Saturday. To register, visit parkrun.ca. Celebrate Recovery is a Christ-centered recovery program for any hurt, hang-up, and habit. This group meets Friday nights at Park Meadows Baptist Church. The evening begins at 7 p.m. with a large group session, followed by small groups at 8 with coffee and dessert at 9. For more information, visit celebraterecovery.ca or call Park Meadows Church office at 403-327-4422. And that's today's Bridge City News Community Calendar.
The U.S. Navy has positioned an aircraft carrier off the coast of Yemen into the Gulf of Aden following recent attacks from the Iran-backed terrorist group, the Houthis. Now, to talk about this in more detail is our foreign affairs expert, Lisa Daftari, who joins us once again from Los Angeles. Lisa, the U.S. Navy has taken this measure against the Houthis, who have allegedly been disrupting international shipping in the Red Sea and Persian Gulf with daily attacks against commercial vessels?
Yes, so this has been ongoing. Just to separate this into a more macro level, the Iran-backed insurgencies in the Middle East, we're talking about Syria, Iraq, and Yemen. So I'm separating it from the war against Israel, have hit U.S. assets and European assets more than 90 times in the last 2 months since the Hamas massacre on October 7th. Now, the White House is trying to kind of hope that this goes away on its own, like a pesky mosquito, and not wanting to escalate things, to drag itself into a war, because we all know the head of the dragon is Iran's regime, who is controlling both aspects of the war, the insurgencies against the U.S. and European allies, and also against Hamas and Hezbollah and Palestinian Islamic Jihad against Israel. Now, the best way to deter an enemy is to not allow them to begin flexing to begin with, but that's too late for the United States, for the West in general. And now we see the Houthis hitting the U.S. assets. We see Syria, we see Iraq, of course, Hezbollah and Hamas getting involved on the Israel front. So yeah, you're seeing, we're parking our carriers, which is, a good move by the United States in order to show some leadership and deterrence. But will it work this late in the game is the question. Will it actually deter Iran's regime from backing down from this master plan that it has?
Now, the U.S. Central Command says an American warship operating in the Red Sea, Lisa, ended up shooting down around 14 attack drones that were launched from Yemen.
Yeah, now imagine. Now, again, the United States is not committed to firing back against Yemen. So any headline you're seeing is probably, after 10-1, meaning it's taken a while for them to even consider this, again, more than just the pesky mosquito that just keeps coming back and buzzing and buzzing and buzzing and trying to provoke an attack by the United States. The Biden administration is in a very, very precarious situation, obviously. The lowest approval ratings of all time. You have wars going on in many different parts, and you have almost wars. You have basically many heated crises going on in different parts of the world. And of course, we're coming up against the 2024 election. So the Biden administration is doing its best to separate itself from any wars, trying to clean its hands of any escalations, particularly in the Middle East, particularly against whether it's involving itself in the war with Israel or getting involved in its own escalations with these insurgencies that are supported by Iran's regime.
And Lisa, the Israel Defense Forces announced the discovery of one of the largest tunnels built by the terrorist group Hamas. The vast subterranean structure was located near the Erez border, crossing located in the northern part of Gaza. It spans well over 4 kilometers, and apparently it was used by Gazans on a daily basis.
Daily basis. Now, this is for all of those who want to talk about blockades. And I was on a show last week, Hal, where the host was trying to convince me of caloric restrictions on Gazans, and it's Israel's fault that the Gazans are hungry. This is the reason the Gazans are hungry, because every penny that Hamas has spent on war, on terrorism, on tunnels, on missiles. It's horrific. If you've seen the footage of this tunnel, 2.5 miles long, it's an actual tunnel. Cars can fit through it. I mean, they've used this obviously for terror purposes, to hide, to transport back and forth, to get into Israel. Of course, we saw that on October 7th. And that is why this ground operation by Israel is so complicated. That's why it's taking so long. And again, remember the human shields. They are in the tunnels, they're in the hospitals, they're in the schools, they're in the mosques. This is all Hamas's fault. And I think it's very frustrating to see world opinion shift because people don't realize or don't want to accept or don't want to hear these realities. When you look at these tunnels and you realize how complex these terror organizations have become, how much money they have had to put into this war, how much money they have had to put into their terror infrastructures, then you understand more why the Palestinian people, just like the Israelis, are victims of Hamas and their leadership that, again, are spending the people's money on terrorism and instead of improving the quality of life over there.
The White House says U.S. President Joe Biden stands by his elusive two-state solution to the Gaza war, Lisa. This despite public disagreements with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. Biden is backing control by the Palestinian Authority?
It's actually very tone deaf, Hal, when you think about it. Right now, Israel is fighting an existential threat, meaning Hamas has sworn that it not only should not one Israeli exist, not only should the state of Israel not exist, but they are, in their charter, are after Jews, to fight and kill Jews, period. Now, isn't it tone deaf for the White House to come along and push a policy of two states living side by side in harmony? That would be wonderful, but it could never happen, as we can see the reality on the ground. You could also look at the different attempts of jihad throughout the world. We're seeing it all over, including in Canada, including in Europe, including in the United States. Hate crimes rising hundreds of percent, escalating and exponentially growing since the war has started. And of course, that just, again, proves that they are not looking to live side by side with Jews or believe in a state of Israel. When they say from the river to the sea, that is not a call for coexistence.
There's a report surfacing by the Washington Free Beacon that the Biden administration has given $34 million to confidential aid groups in Gaza. But military analysts, Lisa, are warning that the money could end up in the hands of Hamas.
Yeah, absolutely. When there's no accountability on, again, taxpayer money that is going to these groups, why are we calling them confidential groups? Why aren't we transparent about where they're going? Why isn't there a vetting system as to where this money is going? If we believe that there's a good chance this will end up in terrorist hands, taxpayers deserve more than that, than to know where their money is going. And of course, when you're looking at the larger scale, when you see the Biden administration and President Biden himself standing at the podium and offering some sort of support for Israel and its right to defend itself, but then giving money to those who are the enemies of Israel and do not want to see Israel's existence any longer. It's kind of a very different picture than the one that the Biden administration is hoping to paint. So a lot of flip-flopping here, a lot of different things, but thank God for these investigative reports that bring out a lot of these realities, and hopefully that the Biden administration will be pushed to answer some of these questions.
Yeah, as journalists, we got to hold the government to account. Now, Lisa, over the weekend, Iran announced that it executed a man convicted of spying for Israel's Mossad intelligence agency. The unnamed man was hanged at the Sahidan Central Prison in the southeastern part of Iran.
So these trumped-up charges are very common for Iran's regime. And I think what people don't know is that over the last 2 months, when everyone's attention has been on the Israel-Hamas war, how many innocent individuals have been hanged by Iran's regime, and many of them on these trumped-up charges, whether it's spying for the United States, spying for the enemy, enemy of the state, and of course, spying for Israel being a very popular charge. Very, very horrific. Again, this points to U.S. policy. It points to the policy of the West and the world in not holding Iran's regime to account, loosening sanctions that are vital to keeping Iran's regime, limited and freezing their assets, but then, allowing them to go on and to hang and execute innocent people. I mean, their human rights abuses are on the list of many, many, many egregious violations, including, giving money to all these terror organizations, expanding their influence in the region. And of course, going on with their weapons program. If the West truly cared about limiting Iran's regime, it would totally change its policy here on forward.
What's the latest with the $6 billion that was released by the Biden administration and those Iranian assets? And they were talking about potentially refreezing some of those assets. What's the latest there?
Correct. There is legislation to freeze the $6 billion because of what has been obviously brought to light with Iran's regime being responsible for funding, and not only funding, but training Hamas militants to go into Israel on October 7th. Now, this was brought by some Republicans. I know that there are Democrats who believe that Iran's regime should be punished and there should be penalties against them as well. What I always bring to light, Hal, is that we can put aside the $6 billion. What's more egregious is that the Biden administration has removed vital sanctions from Iran's regime that has allowed it to sell oil and bring in its own revenue. So over the last 3 years of the Biden administration, the Iran regime has brought in $60 to $90 billion in oil revenue on its own. Wow. So the $6 billion that was given on top of this lopsided prisoner exchange, we already know it was an unfair deal to begin with, but the $6 billion that was given on top really doesn't even come into question, because that check, as many have pointed out, wasn't cashed, it wasn't given to them yet, and now it's in question to freeze that again. But to talk about the larger issue here is that the money should not be frozen. During this war, another $10 billion was given to, I should say, unfrozen by the United States, giving them permission to cash in on that as well. So why are we enriching the regime is the question. Why are we allowing them to move forward, to put more money into global terror and to embolden them, more than anything else, to embolden them? If I were sitting in Iran's regime right now, I would think I can play out the clock. While President Biden is in office, there will be no penalties against Iran's regime, and to carry out whatever nefarious agenda that they have left.
You know, we've talked about the rising tensions, obviously in the Middle East, what's happened in Ukraine with the war with Russia. And Lisa, now there's word that a U.S. nuclear-powered sub has arrived in South Korea amid serious concerns that North Korea could launch an international ballistic missile this month.
Right. That is the fear, because North Korea has definitely made it known to the world that it is testing missiles, not so successfully, but nonetheless the motivation is there. Again, with foreign policy, you want to have a strong stance so that your enemies do not begin flexing to begin with, not to deter once you already believe that that the action is coming. So in this case, again, the United States moving to deter, to kind of prevent anything from escalating, but our enemies are watching very, very closely. Like you said, Hal, if you look around the globe, whether it's Russia, China, Iran's regime, whether it's Hamas or Hezbollah, any one of them, and you can add North Korea to that list, they know that this is a very weak administration, particularly when it comes to foreign policy. So there's no coincidence here that the bad kids are behaving badly, and they know that they have a certain amount of time while President Biden is still in office.
You know, there's also a growing concern that terrorists are crossing America's southern border and entering the country illegally. But according to a sheriff in Arizona, Mark Lamb, Lisa, the terrorists have already arrived. He says the devil is coming through the back door.
Absolutely. And we've had reports about this at the foreign desk as well. How many thousands, I should say, have been caught at the border who are on the FBI's most wanted list. Now, we're not even talking about the getaways, those who got away, meaning that they have not been referenced, cross-referenced with the list or the FBI's most wanted, or they never made it onto the FBI's most wanted. But this goes to the larger point that we want to keep our homeland safe. And when we talk about legal versus illegal immigration, not leaving the border open the way that we have, this is a vulnerability for all of us, including Canada, because we know that they move northward once they get into the country here. Very, very important to pay attention to this, particularly as we know that there is a threat. FBI agents are warning that there has never been a larger threat against the U.S. mainland. They're looking at Hamas or potentially, kind of do-it-yourself lone wolf type terrorists that are emboldened and trained and paid for by Iran's regime. We know that they are not only the #1 state sponsor of terror, but they are also the #1 sponsor of suicide bombers and those who are the lone wolves, right? Very important to not give our enemies a way in. Why are people from places like Iran's regime and Afghanistan and Syria entering from our southern border? It's not just people from impoverished South American countries. So when you look at these facts, you know that there is an issue where there's a vulnerability. And unfortunately, the only people who you hear are either people who left border control because they couldn't take it anymore, or the leadership at the border. So you're looking at states like Arizona and Texas who are leading the charge and letting the Biden administration know that enough is enough.
So Lisa, before we let you go, and we'll talk to you again in the new year, and I'm hoping you and your family have a wonderful holiday season and a happy new year. Let's talk about what's happening with former U.S. President Donald Trump and all of his legal troubles. What's the latest there?
My goodness. Well, a lot of his cases have been thrown out, which kind of shows that our legal system is still working. You can't just bring, bogus charges against people, but he still has a ways to go. Whether or not he will be on the ballot, I think, is everyone's question. Here in the United States, we look at, who will be the Democrat nominee? Will it be Joe Biden, or will he step down? Or will the Republican, coronation go to Donald Trump? So he hasn't been at any of the debates. He's not really, putting out any kind of talking points the way that you're seeing other candidates do so. But if you look at the polls, how on left, right, center, all the polls still indicate that Donald Trump would have a very, very good shot at winning if the elections were held today. So that's pretty significant. Again, we're talking about someone who has not been visible in the sense of running for office. He's been visible in many other ways, but not such great ones too when you look at it. But he has a following. He has support. And I think a lot of people stand by him regardless, and are hoping that they will see him on the ballot.
You know, it's interesting. The polls here in Canada suggest if an election was held here today in Canada, Pierre Poilievre and the Conservative Party of Canada would win in a landslide. But again, those are just polls. We'll have to actually see what happens come election time,
Yeah,
right?
we're seeing a lot of trends moving to conservative candidates. I think a lot of sane people who are whether in the middle, right or left of center, are seeing a lot of changes that they see from the left, and are moving more towards conservative candidates. So let's see.
She's the host of The Foreign Desk and our foreign affairs expert. Lisa, thanks so much for joining us today from Los Angeles.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me. Happy New Year.
Well, hey, are you looking to get out of the house and get some much needed exercise this coming winter? I know I am for sure. Cross-country skiing might just be what you're looking for. Joining me today is Greg Campbell from the Cypress Nordic Ski Club to discuss how you can get yourself on some skis and out onto the snow. You're joining me from Medicine Hat, aren't you, Greg? Welcome to the show.
Yes. Thank you very much.
First of all, maybe provide us a little bit of an overview of what the Cypress Nordic Ski Club is and what exactly you guys do.
Well, I think what happened was, and we've been here for 25 years or so, my wife and I, and it has the Cypress Hills so close to Medicine Hat. It's like 65 kilometers away, and it typically has snow and beautiful trees and trails and all of the above. And we just, a group of us, probably about 30 or so, saw and felt a need to have a club here, just to get combined interests. During COVID, we saw lots of cars parking out at the trailhead in Cypress Hills near Elkwater, and realized that there might be there's probably a need to get united, get some insurance, maybe improve on the track setting and the grooming out there, add some programming, and just find out really who would like to do some of this. And we've really got together. We started a club, Cypress Nordic Ski Club, named it, got a logo, got some badges, some events, a board group of 8 committed volunteers, and this will be our first season really together.
Your first season. Okay. Well, you're right. It's a beautiful area, and obviously there was that need. So you're one of the originators of this club then.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah, I would. This Cal Lentz is the president, and he's got about 8 of us in our expertise, including accounting and communications with Sandra, that was going to be here, and Quan Lee, who's into program and development and has worked so hard on the website, as well as Bill working on a website. So everyone seems to be picking up some slack, and now we just need the snow.
Yeah, I know that's one thing we have been lacking so far. This, I guess, we're not even technically in winter yet, are we? We're still sitting at the edge of fall, but it's December and there's not a heck of a lot of snow out there. So you're right. So I hope that you have a great season coming up. But what kind of programs does this club offer for people who might be interested in getting into cross-country skiing? And how would you cater to different skill levels? Like myself, I've tried cross-country skiing a couple times, not as good, better at the downhill.
Yeah.
Cross-country skiing is hard.
It is, and yet it isn't. I mean, it is because it's physically maybe a little bit more demanding than downhill skiing. And yet, if you just take a couple lessons, and you get the good gear, and you can rent gear right out there in Elkwater, and then it seems to be, and if the grooming is right with the tracks set there, and we have quite a flat course. In cross-country skiing, you go up, and on the flats and the downhills, you do it all, but it's not that extreme there. I would say most of the trails are just a green trail. So, but you can, I would dare to say that you just shuffle along, but that might be how it starts. And if you walk and then you start to glide a little bit, and you use the double pole technique when you can, and you control the speed going downhill.
It is so much harder than it looks, and it is such a great cardio workout too.
Yes,
it's unbelievable. But we were talking about the lack of snow. So how has this recent warm weather trend affected your operations and that overall cross-country skiing season? So far, it's kind of not even a season yet, is it?
I know. Yeah. Well, for sure, it's sad, and we had all this planning to get ready, and we have a course, and we have the Jackrabbit program, which I'll mention too, and that's a kind of a nationally recognized program through Nordique, Alberta, which is our provincial governing body, and then we are going to have lessons every Saturday morning between 10 and 12 for bunny rabbits and jackrabbits. That's I think it's between 4 and 6 and 7 and 9. And
maybe I might have to join one of those, the bunny rabbit class.
Well, we actually have for Learn to Ski program for adults as well. So yeah, so we have lots of stuff like that. But as far as the snow out there, we're going out this Saturday. There's supposed to be a little bit of snow, like, I don't know, maybe 4 or 6 inches. And I know they're making snow at the hill there, but that doesn't really help us out. And the groomers are ready to groom, but they just need the snow and the cold. But it's supposed to be in the plus, 5 or 8 coming up in the next few days. So it's not looking good.
For anybody who is unfamiliar completely with the sport, how would you describe that experience compared to downhill skiing? Obviously, it is more challenging, although you wouldn't think it is.
Well,
a different kind of a challenge, right?
For sure. I mean, cardiovascular, it probably is a little bit more taxing. And they say it's the #1 sport in the world for your max VO2, your volume of oxygen to get to all the muscles. And that's exactly what it is, because you actually use your arms and your back and your legs and your core, everything. So then it's not just a leg burn. So that's why it's maybe a little bit more difficult. But to describe cross-country skiing, we actually call it free heeling sometimes, where your heels come off the ski. Yeah, and you get a little bit of a kick through. It used to be called a kick and glide, and the coaches that we have, the volunteer coaches for bunny rabbits and jackrabbits, are all certified, and that we have insurance, and we're prepared to teach these kids to have fun, show them a little bit about some of the techniques. And then if that's okay after the first couple lessons, we think that they can go on any trail that they want there. I mean, supervised with their parents, we hope, and other adults, but yeah, lots to have fun with.
Right. Now, when I hear the word Nordique, I think of Europe. So where does the sport originate from, and how has it evolved over the years?
Yeah, well, it's originated in Scandinavia over the last 5,000 years. They've seen caves, pictographs of people skiing on these big, long wooden skis in Norway and Sweden. Yeah,
that's wild.
And I've been to Finland 5 or 6 times training myself in winter and in summer, and it's really a different culture there. One that kind of just embraces the cross-country skiing, not just the sport, but the other things, as in commuting. Lots of Finnish boys and girls actually commute on skis to school, and it's just a way that they design their suburbs and things like that. So, I mean, when in Rome, you do that stuff. So when you're in Scandinavia, that's what people do. They cross-country ski. It's really quite unique, and yeah, it's just a great sport. I know when I got into it, I thought, because I came from hockey and invasion sports like that, and volleyball and basketball. But once I started skiing, cross-country skiing, I didn't look back, because it was a great feeling.
Oh, that's amazing. And you're right. I think cross-country skiers are kind of a different breed of people, because I know my brother and sister-in-law are into it. And they brought their skis one time when we were having a snowstorm here. And it's like we couldn't get to the grocery store. And they're like, no problem. They literally skied to the store. I'm like, what are these people doing? So I was like, okay, that's interesting. But I can totally see that now. And so, Greg, I want to get into your background a little bit. How did you personally get involved in the sport? What motivated you to become, involved in all of it?
Well, it was actually in high school in the north part of Toronto. We actually had a cross-country ski team and running team. So, and I was on the basketball and the volleyball team, and just finished playing hockey at 16. And I thought, well, one of the friends said, just come on, give it a try. And really, I think it was just in my first practice or two, and we practiced every day after school. And we had a kind of a ravine valley close by, and we would go down and ski the trails. I loved it so much that after I got home, walked home, I ate supper and I took my skis back to the valley, probably a couple kilometers away, and went skiing again at nighttime. And I just loved it so much. And I think I was really looking for something that got me a little bit maybe closer to nature, the exhilaration of training and working hard, probably the long distance aspect to it, to just let your troubles fade away, or it'd be kind of like a runner's high.
I was just going to say,
Yeah.
I would imagine it's very similar to running because it's such a
Yeah.
solo sport too.
Yes.
I mean, it can be
Yes.
with other people,
Yeah.
but you can do that solo and just kind of get
For
out there
sure.
by yourself a little bit. And like you said, just kind of decompress from
Yes.
the world. I can totally see how that,
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
would be. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's so interesting.
Yeah.
How can people maybe become members of your Cyprus Nordic Ski Club? So what kind of opportunities are maybe available to participate?
Easy to join. We're using that Zone 4 website. So you find our, I guess our website, Cyprus Nordic Ski Club, just by looking it up, searching, and you'll see it. And it's quite detailed. Then you'd link on to the Zone 4, and the membership is $100 for a family of 4, or I think it's $70 per person. And that is almost all insurance that we pay to Nordic Alberta. And within the website, it'll show different avenues to find some of the Learn to Ski program, or the Jackrabbit, or other events like a Moonlight Ski. There was a roller ski event that Quan organized just a few weeks ago. And so there's lots of things on the website.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
How do you engage with the community to get people to kind of like discover the sport if they've never tried it before?
Yeah, can you help us?
That's what we're trying here.
That's what you're doing.
Yeah.
So yes, thank you. We're really new at it. It's not really, and much like Lethbridge, I would imagine, it's not a real Nordic mecca here in Southern Alberta. And yet we are so close to the Cypress Hills, and usually they have really nice snow and, almost like a winter wonderland there. So I think over the pandemic, the last few years, I know when my wife and I and kids were going out there to ski, we would see many more cars there. So we were ready to go, what's happening here? So we have a few events. We have during Family Week, there's a special event day out in Elkwater, so we're going to offer some activities that day. We're offering the Bunny Rabbit and Jackrabbit. We hope to give some lessons throughout the winter. We would like to have an event. I know I would, almost like a Loppet, it's called, and it's kind of like a race, a citizens race, where you just come out and you ski 7 kilometers or 14 or something like that. Yeah. And so we're hoping that way, and people hear about us. We also were at the ski swap a few weeks ago here in town, and we promoted the club. And it's probably going to take a little bit of clawing. And I just think the members of the new board and the club are so invested in this. Because this has been a few times around that we've tried this in the last 25 years since I've been in. It just kind of comes and goes, and but I think it's got the right tipping point now to really get going.
Yeah, well, it is a popular sport for sure, definitely.
Yeah,
and it's a great way to get some exercise and get out in nature. I'm curious too, when you were training with the Olympics, how did you get involved in that side of it? Because you're combining cross country skiing with what is it, target shooting?
Yeah,
is it?
Yeah,
which to me is like the strangest sport ever. And under what circumstance would you ever be doing this in real life? But I guess back in the day, right? Like you were saying before, back in war times, if you need to hunt or something.
Yeah, well, and that is the history. It was, they say, between the Swedish and Norwegian National Guards, I think in the late 1700s, they wanted to have some races, against each other, and they did that. And then that's when the sport just took off. So, and then in biathlon, I used to know, I think it was in 1928 was the first recorded biathlon race at the Olympics. And it has been going ever since, with quite a few changes, just like cross-country skiing. With the advent of fiberglass ski in the mid-70s, techniques change. Now in biathlon and in skiing, they do skate skiing as well as classic, back and forth.
Wow.
You could go backcountry skiing and have wider skis and metal edges. So there's lots of different avenues. Cross-country skiing doesn't just have to be this one thing and just a shuffle along. There can be other things, including telemark skiing, which is a way to a turn on using cross-country skis down the hill. Yeah.
Yes, because the skis are so long and they're so skinny. They
Yeah,
are harder
yeah.
it's harder to maneuver
For sure.
your body.
Yeah, yes.
Is there a trick to it? There must be.
Yeah, there is. It's a telemark turn, and it's a way that you put almost the way that the ski jumpers land when you see them land right after the 90-meter ski jump. They land with one foot in front of the other and kind of like a squat of sorts, and that's how they really extend and turn using this telemark turn.
Okay,
Yeah.
got it. I'll be able
Okay.
to do it now.
Be careful.
I got it down now.
Yeah.
I'm sure it's way harder than it sounds a little bit complicated, to be honest.
Yeah, well, you have to, like all these things, you have to practice a little bit. But I think like the sport of pickleball, where people have success right away, they use the small rackets and you get out there and you can, hit the ball back and forth, and it's quite gentle, and people, I think it's the fastest growing sport for a reason, because people find success right away. And I think with cross-country skiing, you would too. If you're not bundled up too much with a big snowsuit, you're just dressed properly and, wearing the right gear and the toque and gloves and the right equipment, and, not with the heel coming off to the side too much. Is just pretty good. And if the grooming is right, you just get right into the tracks and you can shuffle along to start with. And really in the last, I would say 5 or 10 years, these waxless skis are getting really popular. And when conditions change so much, like in southern Alberta, this is the perfect place for a waxless ski. And so, yeah, we're finding lots of success with it.
So many variables there, but very interesting conversation. Greg Campbell of the Cypress Nordic Ski Club. It looks like we're out of time, but thanks so much for joining me today.
Well, thank you very much, Jeanette. Yeah, this has been excellent.
Absolutely. I'm Jeanette Roche on behalf of all of us here at Bridge City News. Thanks so much for watching.